To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing all those who, whether known or unknown, have held aloft the light of truth through the darkness of human ignorance.
Come on in. We're very happy you can come here and join us in this room where the Dances of Universal Peace appeared more than 50 years ago and then have spread all over the world. And the pictures you see, most of you already know who you're looking at. There's Murshida Rabia Martin. She was the first disciple of Inayat Khan in the Western world, and she was the first Murshida in the Sufi order, and she was also the first Sufi teacher that Murshid Samuel Lewis found. He found her after it was like a world fair that was in the neighborhood where he lived, and he wanted to enter it like Socrates, and then, with his mind totally open, and then he found himself on Sutter Street and in front of her store, and the books there on Kabbalah and things like that, and before he knew it, he was up there in the library with her, and so he studied with her and also with Nyogen Senzaki, who is the Buddhist teacher that's pictured over there. He was one of the first Zen teachers in America, and a tremendous friend of Hazrat Inayat Khan. They merged as one when they came over to Rabia Martin's to be. But I wanted to tell this story of Inayat Khan says, I learn more from my students than they learn from me. He also said it's the the murids that make the Murshid, and he offered to people the practice of Tasawwuri Murshid, or you want to call it Fanafi Murshid, where you would take on his heart, his breath, his inner rhythm, his view of the world, just by absorption from the present. So as when Murshid Sam gave us the walk of Hazrat Inayat Khan, he said, now the first thing you have to do is breathe very slowly. And he was never in a hurry in that sense. But then when Inayat Khan came back to the United States some years later, and that was when Murshid Sam received initiation from him. But before he received initiation from him in public, he received it in his dream, because he was gifted to have those faculties. He, in the dream, he's rushing down towards where the train is coming in, and Inayat Khan's being manifests up out of the where the smoke comes up there, the chimney, and Murshid's being, and so they just met in midair like this, coming into a kind of oneness. And he said, I never left him behind in my whole life, because our initiation happened in eternity, not otherwise. The thing was, everything didn't always work well between the different branches that had happened, and I kind of was very disturbed by what had happened in the board of directors in Switzerland, and when he came to America in 1925 to see Rabia and her students again, he was upset by that. And he told Rabia Martin, he told Samuel Lewis, he told Paul Reps the same thing, that he didn't have as many loyal students as he had fingers on one hand. And this was something that had burned him. He'd gone into his own family, and what was he going to do? He wanted to go back to India and leave all the nonsense about ranks and all the rest of it behind. He told, and Rabia was concerned. She said, well, what will I do for guidance when you're gone? And Murshid Sam had just had an interview with him before and talked about what had happened on his retreat in 1925 at Rabia Martin's land in Mariam, and where he had experienced all the world's religions coming forward into beings, and then with Prophet Muhammad coming on two horseback, and it was doubly coming. Also, he had a visitation from Khidr at that meeting, and this is always looked on very favorably by the Sufis. If you see the book on Khidr that was written by a dear friend of many of us, you'll see Murshid Sam's teaching there. But basically, he told Rabia Martin, because he believed in what Sam had done, he could see that Sam had the transmission from him in that inner sense, and so he told her, if you don't know what I'm thinking, ask Samuel Lewis. Seriously, and as we get all these quotes from other people that were there and heard this, but it was a big problem in her life, because she didn't have the same kind of faculties that Murshid Sam had in terms of vision and the kinds of things that come through dreams and so on. So that bothered her because she was like a lion. She was not going to be put down. Inayat Khan, at that time that I'm talking about, at that meeting that started it all with them, he gave Murshid Sam and Paul Reps a job, and that was to not to let Rabia Martin defend herself in public or in private, and not to let her get all involved with the finances of the organization. Well, that was a zero on arrival, because she was not going to be pushed around. But she was going back and forth within herself around the whole issue of, am I going to listen to him? Am I not going to listen to him? Is this the voice or not? And then, of course, later she became involved with the Meyer Baba movement, which had happened after the passing of Inayat Khan. But when he said that to Murshid Sam in the meeting that he had with him, and he said, I don't have as many disciples as I have fingers on one hand, before he had said to him, I don't want to talk to you like Murshid and Murid, I want to talk to you just man to man. Leave all that aside, just talking to you man to man. And then he said that, and he said, Murshid said it hit him like a gigantic power surge. And he said, I got the strength of my whole life from that moment. And most people wouldn't believe Samuel Lewis's story about it because Inayat Khan never raised his voice. You know, in their world, Inayat Khan never raised his voice. They looked on him in a saintly way, but they didn't look on him as a master in that same way in which he would bring his energy into the world to as God's representative to bring change. And so that was right at the heart of it. Murshid Sam, I was just working on doing a draft of chapter 99 in the biography today. But we've got him back to America now after all his trips abroad, and particularly he did a lot of his time when he was in India and Pakistan and Afghanistan and all that country around there, giving the teachings of Inayat Khan, making him known again in the world where he had grown up. And Murshid's Khalifa and student Saadia Kawa Khan was in Lahore, and he made her a Caliph and put her in the care of Sufi Barkat Ali. So all the Sufis were all very interchanged, and I'm happy we're here in an interchanged way. We have representatives of all the different lineages, but all together we represent the heart and the wisdom and the tremendous teaching that Inayat Khan gave to find the heart in all beings, the sacred in all human beings, in all beings, that there is this sacred heart that we can believe in, refer to, see, not be separated from, because we want to experience the oneness of the one and only being, and we want to do it through love, harmony, and beauty. These were the qualities that mostly came out through Inayat Khan. He was a master musician. His grandfather was known as the Beethoven of India. He had been initiated prior to the initiation that we're all familiar with from the tree that we got, but there was a previous one also in his earlier life. So there are all these trees. It's like a tree. It's like branches of the same tree. But down, what are the roots of the tree? At the roots of the tree is the heart. And the heart is what is behind everything. And so all these practices lead us to the place of being able to remove all the obstructions, thought and pain and all the rest of it that live within our heart, where we carry our deepest feelings, and in order to clear that altar in the temple of God so that we can shine that light forth and be agents of God in the world. And so I actually made a couple of notes that I thought I wanted to address a few issues, so I've already addressed some of them, just to see Inayat Khan as a master and not just as a saint, to understand he had this deep power that he, out of his own sainthood, refused to share with people. He kept it all to himself, but when he went to his own family, and told them, they were quite disturbed as well. And then, of course, there was his daughter. She was unbelievably important in the history of World War II. And why? Because she had learned from her father how to remain silent. She'd been a part of this whole group that had been organized by Churchill to be spies. She had the perfect French, so she could go right back to France, and she was a radio operator there. She was later betrayed and ended up in Auschwitz. But she was all the macho guys that were in the group, they all gave in to the interrogation by the Nazis, but she didn't, because the person who was running them who was supervising it, read her book, which was, I mean, she had a radio show where she read to children. She wrote things for children. She saw the fairies in the garden. You know, she was that sort of person. She played the harp. She was soft in every way, and yet then she had to take the strength of her father, who told her not to tell any lies. And so he looked at the Jataka tales that she had written, these tales of the different incarnations of the Buddha, you know, and the forms, and she wrote that. So he noticed one of those tales where one of the characters, in order to succeed, had remained silent. So he asked her if she could do that, and she said yes. And so she remained silent, no matter how much they tortured her, no matter what they did to her. She didn't give anything away. And they wanted to bring her back to England because she'd been betrayed, and she was the last one there that was sending messages. And Murshid Sam said she had received the whole thing from Inayat Khan. She really had the total download from him. And now she's being viewed as a saint and been proposed to be put on the 50-pound bill in England, and a beautiful book. I don't know how many people here have read Spy Princess, but a few of us have, and I recommend it to you all because it's a story of a tremendous woman hero who was not afraid to face ignorance with the fana of her father, the actual transmission that she had of his strength and of his ability to go into that place of peace out of which arises all of our tremendous feelings of heart. So I don't want to go on and elaborate further. I think I've taken up enough time talking about it. I just want to bring his awareness into the room, not simply as someone who everyone looked up to, but someone who had the power to affect the whole world. And his message has gone all over the world, not only through the dances, but through the different groups and the different ways in which people have gone into the teachings that he left, the Gathas, the Githas, the Sangathas, the Sangithas, all these things that were given in different forms. And so it was through Murshid Sam getting them via Rabia Martin that they became a part of what was put into the public domain. So we have those before us. We all have the same teachings, but the main thing is Sufism is based on experience and not on definitions or conceptual projections. It's based on what experience you've had. And I think a great number of us were drawn to Murshid Sam because we were looking for an experience, and we had seen our own background, religious background, as being hypocritical. So we wanted to escape from hypocrisy and to find something that we could actually feel right in our body, right in our heart. And he had it. So that was a transmission he was continually giving. And he said, you know, because when he went all over India and Pakistan doing what he did, he met so many Sufis in Egypt and so on. But he brought Inayat Khan's message to them. And he said, I'm the proof of Hazrat Inayat Khan. The murids make the teacher. He never left Inayat Khan behind. Even when Inayat Khan came to him later in the days when he'd been helping out at the Meyer Baba place on the East Coast, he was ultimately put on, Inayat appeared to him, and he gave him over to Muhammad to be a guide at that point. But it's all, the Sufis look on it like, it's called a chain, a silsila, right? But it's, the Buddhists call it the bloodstream of the Buddha when you're getting the initiation. You're entering the bloodstream of the Buddha, you know, I mean, and that's what we want to do. We want to, because people say, well, how have you been teaching for more than 50 years? And I say, well, I know whose hand I'm holding. I used to go around saying teacher's illness, and that the illness is you think you always have to have all the answers. And when we met the Dalai Lama, he was trying to approach all the Muslims in a way, because, as he said, he's a perfect Sufi. He said there's at the heart of every religion is the same heart of love and compassion. So I want to be known as the defender of Islam. Because he said once you are looked on with hatred by the rest of the world, you become like you're in a place you have to protect yourself all the time. You only want to talk to people that you already know. And so what I'm here to do is just to ask you to show us your heart. Show us that heart. That is in the center. And when they asked him, what is your religion? He said, my religion is kindness. So there's a Sufi for you right there. So we all are Sufis in our heart when we look deep into our heart and we see that the soul that we have is the soul of God, and eventually we awaken in that. So I want to take leave of being on the floor here and see what you have next on the program.
Thank you. So, let's see, how are we going to do this? Let's sing first. We're going to do a dance.
Okay.
Don't mind me, I can't hear through this ear.
Okay, well, listen to the other one.
I'll listen to this one. Or you can lend me your ears.
I'll lend you my mic.
Is it on?
Yes, you want it?
As-salaamu.
Now we have to stand up.
Partner dance. Now you can stand. This is the invocation of Inayat.
Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance.
So this is a greeting dance. Inayat, greeting Inayat, the beloved of God, and then Kalama, Budlela. Hey, who's talking? And Kalama, Budlela, that the attraction of God has such power that love, lover, and beloved are one. So, should we have 2 circles? Let's try 2 circles. A few people come in the middle. A few partners come in the middle. Raise your hand if you need a partner. Yeah. Okay, so face your partner. Okay, so we're going to do this movement. As-salaamu, as-salaamu. And then there's this picture of Inayat Khan where he's got his hand up like this. You ever seen that photo? He's either saying hello or saying goodbye, or just, okay. So, Ya Salam, Inayat. And you take a half turn, follow your arm. Ya Habiba. Now, your corner. Ya Salaam. Take another half turn, face your partner. Ya Habiba. Take their hands and do it all the way around, both hands. You don't cross them. Yeah, and go around each other. Ya Now turn in place. You should be at the same position you started out with, right? So turn in place, and in the direction you're facing, go in that direction as you turn. Out the center. So the third circle has to stay in the third circle, second circle has to stay in the second circle. And if you get confused, it doesn't matter. Don't worry, be happy. I'll keep coaching you as we go around. You've already passed the audition by walking in the door. Okay? So you're all part of the troupe. No? Top pay for all of them. That's it. Okay, here we go. Another half turn. Now hold hands.
So it's a wonderful experience to be together again and always to celebrate Murshid's presence in the Sangha. It's the most blessed thing on earth. And the older we get, the more valuable it becomes. When we're young, we seem to throw those things away or take them for granted, but when you get older, they become more precious than gold, or more precious than rubies, as the Bible says. Well, Wali led us into a beautiful thought about our beloved Murshid. And what I'm hoping to offer you today is a presentation following a little bit of what Wali started saying, which is about the intuitive faculties of Hazrat Inayat Khan, which our practices, God willing, will help us develop in the core of our being so that we can reach those stages that our soul's plan was destined to have. And that's why we met each other. That's the reason why we came together. And one of the things that was very moving to me was the story of Murshid when he, in 1907, when he received the mantle of Pir by his teacher Abu Hashim Madani in India, in Baroda. And Murshid Madani said to our Murshid, Hazrat Inayat Khan, you now have this sacred mantle to take the message of spiritual liberty into the world. And he was destined to move out from where he was in a very, very comfortable region with his Murshid, because at that same time that he received that mantle of responsibility, Murshid Abu Hashim Madani died. And he knew that he had to go out to the world. And his very first impulse was to visit the ancient ones, the holy ones, the Sufis, the masters that were in the vicinity, to learn. He was only 25 years old at that time. And he wanted to see what their insight was, what it was that they learned. And the very first thought that came to him was, I must go to the Dargah of Khawaja Moinuddin Chishti in Ajmer. And that is what he did. He took a pilgrimage to Ajmer. And it is these experiences that I want to share with you because they are so fascinating and so enriching to our soul's purpose. So here he took this holy pilgrimage to the Dargah in Ajmer, and he was sitting there in contemplation and meditation. And knowing the love of that deep inner state that Murshid had from the very beginning due to Abu Hashim Madani's teachings, and his deep sense of listening that Abu Hashim Madani gave him as a musician, he sat at the Dargah and he noticed a cortege of royal family coming up to the Dargah with a prince who was considered a lunatic. Now, they didn't have psychological terms as we have, a schizophrenic and psychopathological details. They just called him a lunatic. And the family, knowing the holiness around the saints' Dargah, brought their child to come to the Dargah to receive healing. So Murshid was sitting in meditation watching the family bring this very activated child to the foot of the Dargah, presenting the child to the Khawaja Moinuddin Chishti in the prayer that he would be healed. And it was at that prayer, at that moment when he saw the family give the child over to the Dargah, that Murshid saw the presence of Khawaja Moinuddin Chishti rise up into the presence of the atmosphere. And he went over to the boy and he began to beat the boy on his back. And the boy started falling onto the ground yelling, "Don't hit me, don't hit me, you're hurting me." And the Khawaja Moinuddin Chishti kept saying, "Leave this child, leave him." And the boy said, "You're hurting me, stop beating me, stop beating me." And the Khawaja kept beating the child. And then all of a sudden, something happened. The child fell to the ground. Some essence was removed from the child, and the child woke up completely healed. That was one of the first experiences that Murshid experienced at the Dargah. The next followed, which was after he experienced that, and not knowing how to place it in his own cognition, there was a young girl who was also considered aberrant mentally. What the aberrance was, we don't know, but she was considered aberrant as she was acting very erratically. And he also, Murshid, our Murshid Inayat Khan, saw Khawaja Muinuddin Chishti lead her to the brook, to the river that moved down, a babbling river that moved out to the sea. And he took the girl into the water, and she began to drown. And she says, "I can't swim. I'm going to drown. I'm going to drown." And Murshid saw the Khawaja hold her head under the water and press her head down like this into the water until a moment of danger passed, and he lifted her out and directed her back on land, and she was completely healed. Now, this experience sat with Murshid for over 14 years in deep meditation. And in 1926 and 27, when he went to Suresnes, France for the summer school to do the summer school teaching at Fazl Manzil in Suresnes, France, he cultivated these lectures that we have now in volume 11, Philosophy, Psychology, and Mysticism, which he gave at the summer school. And also in volume 4, the healing text on the mind world. All of you have access to these texts. Those teachings in volume 11 were cultivated over those 14 years that he digested these experiences with the Khawaja Muinuddin Chishti in Ajmer. And they bring to us an enormous amount of insight into the soul and into the psychic state of intuition. And this was validated again in another experience that he had. When he took a trek, he was still in India at the time, he hadn't left. I'm going backwards instead of in Suresnes. I'm just going to go back to the early part again, where he took a trek with 3 bullock carts. And he was to cross this terrain in the Himalayas to get to a certain destination to meet a sacred soul, a holy soul. And they wanted him, they knew he was a man of great personage. They wanted him to sit in the first bullock cart. And he said, no, I'll sit in the last one. I'm fine, I'm comfortable, I'll be all right. And he was told before they took the trek that there were brigands on the road, and that these brigands would steal everything. They'll even take your clothes. And please don't go this route. So the driver of the person leading the trek said, well, what should we do? And everyone who was in the party seemed to say, well, let's just take that route and we'll just face what God sends us. Hazrat Inayat Khan was okay with it. But on the way, a very interesting thing happened. Was when they were just getting to the place where they were camping, where they were going to settle for camping, he saw a misty vision of a being circling his wagon, a misty being. And he looked aside, and his heart, he said, almost fell out of his body because he saw the presence of his Murshid, Abu Hashim Madani. And he knew that he was with him. And he just was so ecstatic at that presence of his Murshid again, that you are never separated once you are in Bayat. Never. He fell asleep and had the most blissful sleep, but he was waking up that next morning, and the bullock cart rider at the first cart was yelling that they were robbed, that the first wagon and the second wagon had been robbed, but Inayat Khan's wagon was not robbed. And he knew at that time that the visions that he had at the Dargah of Khawaja Muinuddin Chishti and this moment with his own Murshid were real. These are not false things that happen to crazy people. These are real experiences that happen when the love and the heart are engaged. This brings out 5 major principles that Inayat Khan asks us to remember in the teachings of Sufism. And they're so precious because they are the keys for our development and the reason why we met this sacred Sangha, this amazing community. One of them, and the first one, is keep your practices alive. Keep doing your practices. That's key to developing your intuition, because they're made and cultivated through thousands and thousands of years of Sufi mystics doing these practices. Murshid collated them so brilliantly together. Number 1 was that, keep your practices alive. Number 2, study the readings. Study the readings, not as though you are reading a novel, but that they emblazon on your heart. Only read sections, simple sections, and let them emblaze upon your heart so that you are not reading with your mind, but you're reading with your heart. That's the key. So, and to study them on a daily basis, on a regular basis, so you start living them. The third aspect, there are 5. The third key was remember that this sacred Sangha is a gift given to you by God. And everyone is your teacher. You might have the teacher that you're in bayat with, but every single being that you meet on this path is bringing a teaching to you. And if we can get it, we elevate. And as we elevate the whole. Because if we can do it here in our community, we can do it in the world. So this is our testing ground. So to keep good, beneficial thoughts on our Sangha at all times, even if you don't like what somebody says, and even if they do something odd to you, don't go into the negative. Hold the benefit, because that's the sacred gift. And you'll get the gift. You will get it. That's how the intuitive body evolves. That's the third. The fourth is to keep your balance. And that's in everything, between activity and repose. Keep your balance. That's a very, very important thing. That's why the dances are so beautifully designed to hold your balance into holding the divine as the same time you're moving your body. It's a somatic experience that's so deeply powerful. And that's in diet too. Watch your diet. Don't go off and have a sugar freak out. You know, watch what you're doing, you know. So balance was his fourth key. The fifth key and most precious key that Murshid gave us is guard sacredly your silence, which Murshid Wali was speaking about. Guard your silence. That is the most precious gift for developing your intuition. Because if we cannot listen and we don't know how to be in silence, we will not be able to hear what the soul of the one is giving to us as a gift in this life. So in that last fifth key, I'd like us just to have a moment of silence, and I'll finish speaking. just like these words of Murshid to fall on your heart after this silence. I did not come to bring a special doctrine to you. Find out for yourself. My work is only to tell you in what way the faculty of intuition, love, and revelation can be awakened. Study my teachings. They are filled with keys that will open doors for you. But of course, the greatest scripture is life itself. Thank you for letting me share these stories with you. Thank you.
All right, this is Shams Kairys. He is from the Inayati lineage.
Could you say that again? Shams.
Shams.
What's the second one?
Kairys.
Say it again.
Shams Kairys.
Kairys.
Not of great importance. I'd like to reconnect to the silence that was in the space when I walked out the door, just for a moment. And I'm sure you've all felt that in contacting the depth of Pir-O-Murshid and Inayat, you would find a deep well of silence. Murshid would often begin his talks by saying, "Beloved ones of God." So it was just blessing from the very start, an experience of blessing emanating from that encompassing silence and love there. One of the great gifts that he imparted is a sung Zikr. And it's one of the direct ways to experience and enter into the beauty of Murshid and Inayat. So I'd like us to...
And Allah, yeah.
What's that?
And Allah, too.
And Allah, too. Yes, I mean this form,
Yeah.
because it's an articulation, yes, of universal reality. He spoke, I think he became more and more aware of the agitation in society and in the people he was encountering. And he spoke about this as a deep concern. And my feeling is that this Zikr was a gift to a kind of balm for that agitation. That's the note that I feel it strikes, and at least we can take a taste of that today, this evening. So the form is very simple. I think most of you are familiar, and just if you're not familiar with it, you'll just be swept into it easily enough, I think. The pace is slow. As Wali said, he rarely hurried. And contemplative. So we just do it in that manner. La ilaha With eyes open, looking at each other. Beloved ones of God. One last time, very gently.
Musicians, if we could please come into the center. And let's stay in one circle, please. And if you want to sit, you might want to come into the center as well. And let's join hands on the outside, please. About 10 decades or so ago, Pir-O-Murshid Hazrat Inayat Khan gave to his murid, Samuel Lewis, the remembrance in unison with the will of God. We will to have peace. Let's say that once together. In unison with the will of God, we will to have peace. And with this intentionality for ourselves, for the inner universe within each of us, as well as our larger reality of life at this moment on our mother planet, let's do healing Zikr. Dance. We'll say, let me do thy will, Allah, Allah. Again, we come to this mystery, the will of God. Here we are again saying it. Let me do thy will, Allah, Allah, Allah. We'll be mostly sidestepping to the right, to the left. And then our refrain will be, as we enter the circle, we'll be extending the palms of the hands. Let's, while I'm talking, just get some magnetism going in our palms. We're saying, Ya Shafi, you who are the healer. Let's say it together. Ya Shafi, Ya Shafi. Okay, extending palms as we move in. And then as we move out, we'll be singing, Ya Khafi, Ya Khafi, Ya Khafi. That one who is the remedy of all ill. Okay, Ya Shafi, Ya Kafi. A variation on this dance. I want to share with everyone, if you haven't done it before. We'll start, and I'll make sure we all know. We'll start above the crown, and as we're singing, "Let me do thy will," Allah, bring the palms of the hands down through the frontal chakra system, grounding this prayer, "Let me do thy will," Allah. And then up again through the chakra system, Allah, Allah.
Allah, Allah.
Allah, Allah. Okay, let's join hands and find. Let me do thy will, Allah. Allah, Allah. Let me do thy will, Allah. Allah, Allah. Right. Let me do thy will, Allah. Sidestep. Allah, Allah. Let me do thy Into the cellular structure, that every part of us is awake and alive with this message of love, harmony, and beauty. Amen.
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 Okay, we're going to stay in the same mood. We're going to take the dance of the Kalama dance. And we're going to, this is a dance of Murshids. It's gone all over the world. And we are happy to have it right here because this is where the dances became public, right here in this room. Only it didn't have a nice floor on it.
The oil stains are still there.
Yeah, they are, underneath everything. You gotta clear that away. Yeah, okay. So I think people know the dance. We're going backwards, we're letting go. We're saying La ilaha, we're saying really nothing stands alone. You know, the only thing that stands alone is the one and only being. So that leads you to that understanding that there is only the one and only being. But it takes us backwards because we have to let go of our egoic stuff and leave the way for the one and only being to be present for us. So we go backwards in that way. When we go forwards, we are doing the affirmation part of this. So, musicians, please, give us a note. Thank you.
Do you want one circle?
Yeah, I think one circle will work.
Okay.
Just watch out for running into a chair. Okay. And it really, as Shabda says, it has a very real connection with the song to Muhammad when he came into town for the first time after leaving Mecca. He arrived there where he was going. Okay, so here we go. Okay, give that. that we just do during this silence here, but the musicians play on. So leaving out as we move back and in as we move forward. One more time. So just taking this silence and feeling our connection with all beings in the great web of life. Let's send the heartfelt energy from this space into the atmosphere of the world for the benefit of all. I don't have your notes, but my sense is we're moving toward the end of what we're doing here. And
over here.
yeah, over here. And
We'll do the prayer.
so how about we do the prayer Khatum? Because it's very meaningful. I was just going to say that. No matter, we're connected. It means a lot, okay, to listen to what the words are saying, because it's so much right at the soul of what we do. Okay.
Just to let you know.
So, O thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, Lord of heaven and of earth, open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly cometh from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness. Teach us thy loving forgiveness. Raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide. Send us the peace of thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being. Amen. Amen. Yeah. You can be pro blue.
Thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to sing one more song that's kind of, I don't know if it's traditional at this point, but here it goes. May all beings be well. May all beings be do enjoy each other's company. This Sangha is one in the Inayat lineage. We're all one Sangha, so let's enjoy each other for a while.